Today's talk is divided into three parts A, B, C. As for how the three parts are structured, I think you will be able to see the process of my design and the design through process related to noise over time. In the first part, part A, I would like to talk about when I started designing, in other words, from 1955 to early 1960, and what kind of method I used to develop my design ideas using actual examples. You probably do not know much about this part. I myself am examining my own work for the first time in 50 years. So there are still some details that I cannot decipher, but this is an analysis of the initial design. Next, the second part, part B, is when I entered West Germany in 1964, when I was invited to the Ulm School of Design in Germany. This is a summary of what I explored and thought about during my stay in Ulm until I returned to Japan. Ever since I became interested in graphic design, I have been interested in the theme of what the human eye is and how humans perceive and create shapes. In the 1960s Germany, especially at the Ulm School of Design, information science theory and information aesthetic theory were very popular. After all that contemporary research, I will give you a brief recap of how I've been trying to understand and organize it into a thought process. The third part, C, is how I applied the development of various ways of thinking to my own book design after 1970. This was one of the important themes of last year's exhibition, and it will be part C. Well, I would like to start today's theme of Born Out of Noise. What is noise? Why is noise important? Can we all please listen for a moment now? This room seems to be a silent space with nothing, but if you listen closely, you can hear the faint sound of the air conditioning. If you listen closely, I think you can hear someone rolling a piece of paper or the person next to you moving. These faint sounds reach your ear, following the eardrum inside your ear. The human ear has a mysterious function, and if you are to listen carefully in a quiet space like this, if I dropped my 1 yen coin on the floor, many people would be able to hear the sound. The human ear is very sensitive to faint sounds. Maybe humans needed such keen ears at the survival field, or I think it means that they have been trained to be able to listen. At the same time, having such keen hearing, we do not hear the sounds that we should be hearing. Now, can you all please listen to the sounds inside your head? It is almost soundless, right? Since I am speaking now, my voice is echoing inside my head. If you really think about our ears when we eat, for example, when we eat a meal, when we bite something, when we bite into a pickled daikon radish or a cucumber, we are sure to hear violent sounds of crunching and munching. But normally, when we eat our meals, Do we hold our breath for these grace notes? Alternately, the human head has countless blood vessels that supply blood to various organs such as the eyes, ear, and brain. Blood is pumped out of the heart and returned to the heart with such force that it is said that the entire blood is replaced in 1 minute. It surely makes a swishing sound. In fact, doctors who hold a stethoscope to our skin can hear these sounds. In other words, the inside of a human body makes a sound and is noisy. The body is filled with various other sounds, such as the beating of the heart, the sound of swallowing, the movement of internal organs, and the friction of the muscles. Even in the head, capillaries protrude from the small eardrum that can pick up sounds from the outside world, promoting blood circulation and metabolism. Listening to the faint sound, you should be able to hear the sound of the extremities of the blood flow. Now, hearing such sounds, human ears are capable of hearing faint sounds from the outside. Isn't it a fascinating ability filled with inconsistencies? If this is the case, then ears capable of catching sounds that we want to hear or cannot hear have a delicate, fine ability to make it impossible to hear the many sounds that are in our heads. It is not as if we cannot hear them, but more like we are not hearing them. Sounds we hear and sounds we do not hear. Human eardrums are actually capable of capturing both these types of sounds. Of course, the human brain works differently in recognizing these two sounds. If we think about it in this way, there are two types of sounds in the human body. Moreover, most of the sounds are noise, like ornamental sounds and sounds of blood flow. In other words, noise envelopes the entire body. Noise not only envelops the whole body but also strikes our eardrums every moment from the external world surrounding us. Before birth, human beings are raised inside the mother's womb, but actually, the inside of a mother's body is extremely noisy. While swimming in the amniotic fluid, we listen to various noises of the mother's womb. The amniotic fluid has the sounds of nutrition being sent through the blood vessels. The sound of the mother's heartbeat is also transmitted. The fetus itself has a heartbeat sound. Even before the fetus was born, it was growing in constant noise. When I was discussing with the composer Toshi Ichiyanagi about the sounds that surround humans, we came to the conclusion that the sound of the moment when a sperm and an egg meet may be the most important starting point among all sounds. I once heard a story from a researcher who studies life sciences. In the field of view of a microscope, more than 10,000 sperm continued to run towards the egg, and one sperm broke the membrane surrounding the egg. It is said that the egg is dyed slightly pink in that instant. There is no doubt that this moment is a dramatic change for the sperm. If you can hear these changes with your ears that capture the microscopic sound, won't it be an unforgettable sound? After birth, Humans are surrounded by external noise and to this day are surrounded by sounds we hear and sounds we do not hear. In other words, the sounds we hear more is not the musical notes of music, but it is a mass of noise that echoes in various ways. Needless to say, the nature surrounding us also emits various audible and inaudible sounds. Typical examples of inaudible sounds include the flying of a spacecraft, the sound of electromagnetic waves, auroras radiating lights, and the swell of gravitational waves. The sound of insects, the flow of a river, the stir of wind are examples of audible sounds. In addition to these, a wide variety of noises created by human civilization surround us every day. Above all, since the Industrial Revolution, the human environment began to be covered with violent sounds. Cities are born and cities are destroyed. The tearing noise is one of them. Furthermore, the recent Jasmine Revolution is a good example. There is also the sound of turmoil caused by a group of human beings, or the roar of catastrophe brought on by a little shudder before rise. It goes without saying that this kind of dynamic noise exerts a great influence on our daily creative lives. In my creative activities to date, noise that has particularly influenced me and that I have continued to pay attention is, for example, the French music concrete, which began a little way back in the 1950s. This is translated as concrete music, but it's a new noise technique that uses, for example, a tape recorder to process real sounds in various ways and makes a collage out of it. Or electronic music that synthesizes electric sounds produced by transmitters such as vacuum tubes. Various experiments in the field of art of combining sound and light, starting with futurism. Then, in the 1960s, art brut, which is translated as wild art, emerged, and the roar of light of various arts created by beats after art informal, such as Dubuffet and Potrier. And then the sound of the collage of our daily lives created by pop art. Such things spring up as artistic noise filled events scattered around us. In my opinion, they are also noisy phenomena. I took a graphic design course, so it was especially interesting to me that in the advertising genre, noise is being constantly eliminated. This is because advertising shows a kind of future image of human beings. It is an attempt to depict the ideal human life. Even if they aim for an ideal, this is a pseudo ideal, but the basis of advertising is to advertise and sell products that should aim for this ideal. The advertising space is a perfectly clear world and cannot do without order and light. Noise cannot intrude into the orderly, light filled future of advertising. That is to say, it does not need noise. Noise cannot penetrate into advertising design. This was the first thing I realized when I started as a graphic designer. I think we can say that advertising is a form of expression that idealizes non noise. Therefore, I never pursued advertising aggressively. That was because it was in a world far away from the lively noise. I intend to maintain the approach of always keeping a distance with advertising. Well, thinking this way, the outer space that surrounds us is filled with noise. How can that noise be brought into design? Or what kind of design method is it that resonates with noise and visualizes noise? I continue to explore this to this day. However, that method of expression has undergone various changes over time. Noise in Japanese is jatsuon, or it is also called suon, noise or din. Chinese characters differ from Japanese and they use the right side character on the screen to say suon, noise, cacophony. It is quite an interesting character that has four mouths in it. The character Jatsu has a little different meaning to it. The right side radical of Satsu is the old bird radical. If the tree character is added below it, it becomes shu altogether. So this old bird radical takes the meaning of gathering various things. The radical on the left is a variation of the character for robe and is said to mean a colorful rag. In other words, the Jatsu in Jatsuan noise can be interpreted as a patchwork made by gathering different colored clothes. On the other hand, there is Suwon. Jatsuan has a different reverberation than Suwon. The character for Su is a combination of horse and flea. This does not mean that the horse jumps up after being bitten by a flea, but rather that the horse becomes anxious and scratches the ground with his front paws. Horses are nervous and scratch the ground when irritated. It is said that the act of scratching with this nail is the meaning of the character flea. The noisy behavior of horses seems to be the modern interpretation of the word su. And then the su that means noise in Chinese. This has exactly four mouths gathered together, and in today's interpretation, it can be said that it is a very noisy character. It is associated with the word kiansu, tumult, clatter. In Shizuka Shirakawa's Jito, it is interpreted a little differently, and it is said that it is to hang a large number of congratulatory vessels called sai from a tree. It is interpreted as a dissonant sound against a harmonious musical tone. Either way, the two characters on the right, Su and Su, means noisy, loud, rustle. They are characters that are centered on sound. In all the three characters, the Jatsu from Jatsuan is a character related to color or light. Contrary to that, the characters Su and Su are characters that are based on sound. That is to say, the meaning of the word Jatsuan is noise that has light mixed in it, and on the other hand, there is noise in which sound plays a major role. It means light, that is, various colors related to vision. There is also the meaning of noise that works on hearing. As per modern usage, we say Jasoku, assorted colors, when it is related to color and light. Alternately, the word Jaku, miscellaneous thoughts, is not used in our daily life, and the expression Jotsuon, noise, which uses sound as the main character, has become a translation corresponding to the Western word noise. This is because verbal communication forms the basis of our culture and largely dominates the daily life of today's society. I think what it means is that the noise through sound interferes with communication through words. Jacques Attali of France, a European sage and a researcher on cultural theory, who became the president of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in the 1990s, was also a researcher on cultural theory. In the handouts given today of Sugiura Design Theory by Mr. Shoji Usuda, a sentence written by Jacques Attali in his book Noise is quoted. It is a concise and precise point, so let's read it for a moment. Western knowledge has focused on looking at the world of the 25th century. It did not understand the world is not to be seen, but to be heard. The world is not to be read, but to be heard. Science has always tried to monitor, tame, abstract, and innervate sensibility. Forget that life is noisy and only death is silent. The hammering sound of labor, the noise of humans, the sounds of nature, noise that is bought, sold, and forbidden, nothing happens where there is no noise. In other words, where there is noise, future intelligence is born from within it. Let's turn the Western knowledge that has been the era of sight for over 2000 years into the era of noise-filled sound. I clearly state such a proposal. As explained earlier, Jatsu has two meanings of Jatsuoku, assorted colors, and Jatsuon, noise. From the 1950s to the 1960s, I made various attempts to combine the two noises related to sight and hearing into something tangible. I would like us to take a look at some of these attempts. It is titled From Sound to Echo.